another assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Insane. The mainstream media is probably not going to talk about it, so you got to come on board and get it from us. Welcome to Verbal Online. My name is Noel. Taking a look at my news stream, and let's take a look at Maria Bartiromo talking about this Trump assassination attempt, which is crazy. They don't know Trump is untouchable. As much as they try, they're not going to be able to get it. But let's take a look at what Maria Bartiromo got to say, because this is insane. Let's take a look.
Good Sunday morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunday Morning Futures. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and today we are covering breaking news out of South Florida, where an armed man was shot and killed by U.S. Secret Service agents and Palm Beach County Sheriff deputies after unlawfully entering a secure perimeter at Mar-a-Lago earlier this morning around 1:30 a.m. last night. The man was armed with a shotgun and a gas can. No Secret Service agents or personnel with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department were injured. President Trump at the time was at the White House at the time of the incident. Right now, we bring in former FBI Special Agent Nicole Parker with more. Nicole, thanks very much for being here. Your assessment of what took place last night.
This is just another attempt potentially to assassinate President Trump. We know that he was not there at the time, but we are not sure of what the shooter knew at the time that this occurred. He may not have known that President Trump was not present. But Maria, a 20-year-old male, like you mentioned, approached. He breached the perimeter, and he had a shotgun and a gas can. The agents and the law enforcement officers, West Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, approached him and told him to put it down. He agreed to put down the gas can, but instead he raised the shotgun into firing position, and they had to make a split-second decision. Again, as a law enforcement officer, as an FBI agent, a Secret Service agent, whatever department you may be with, when you believe that your life is in imminent danger of death or serious physical injury, deadly force is justified. And that is something that the FBI will be coming in and doing a full investigation. Again, the press conference this morning was extremely well done. It was very organized. We had different representatives from each of the agencies. I can tell you that as an agent who worked in FBI Miami, I have the privilege to meet with the special agent in charge of FBI Miami just Friday evening here in Miami, and he is buttoned up. He will ensure that there is a solid investigation into this case. They are right now sending and deploying what we call our evidence response team. They are the evidence experts. They go in and they gather the evidence in a way that is proper, legal, and we do not at this point know if there was just one individual. There might have been a co-conspirator behind the scenes. We do not know, but they will follow the evidence process as if it is going to eventually end up in the court of law. That is how we do business there. I think also it's important to know.
No, please continue.
Okay. Also, it was important to note that the special agent in charge of FBI Miami came in and he said, look, we need anyone in the area, in the neighborhood, surrounding areas. If you have exterior cameras, please provide that footage to the FBI. And again, that number that you can call to give any sort of tips or information is 800-CALL-FBI. What they're going to want to do is they're going to want to retrace the steps of exactly how this individual got there, where they came from. Obviously, this person will be fully identified. There will be a full profile done on who he was, what his motive was, his grievance. There's typically a precipitating stressor that causes an individual to do something like this. But we are aware that President Trump is in more danger than any other president. And again, this could potentially be the third assassination attempt on his life.
Right.
And there are people that are working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep him safe every day. And Melania, his wife, his children, his family, they should have the right to live safely, even if he is not present there. And so this is, again, unacceptable. This will not be tolerated. And anyone that has the idea that they think that they're going to do this, you will be faced with a severe consequence, potentially losing your life. Because when you are, raising a gun at a law enforcement officer, deadly force is justified.
Well, in fact, you have to wonder how it is that this individual was able to get as close as he was, holding a shotgun and a gas can. If, in fact, this is a potential assassination on President Trump's life, this would be the third time and the second at or near Mar-a-Lago.
Right. That will be fully investigated. Again, they will retrace the steps, how we got there, what exactly occurred. But right now, the number one thing is that the law enforcement officers were safe. No one was injured. And thankfully, President Trump is safe. He was not present. But again, they'll do a full analysis and scrub. Right now, they're going to pull this individual. They're going to pull his text messages, his social media accounts, if he was involved in any gaming, things of that sort. We're in a really dark place in our culture and society where individuals of this sort are actually praised. They're put out on pedestals and heroes. And we know that there are people that absolutely despise our president. They have this rhetoric is so toxic and it causes people to act out. And then they lash out in violence. And they believe that they are fully justified many times to do this. That is not okay. It is unacceptable. And you will face the full consequence of the law or even potentially lose your life if you act in this manner. We cannot have this continue to happen.
And you have to wonder how many attempts will be enough to stop the rhetoric on the left. You've got just this upcoming week, expectations of protesting against President Trump and his State of the Union address on Tuesday night. Why the entire Congress, Republicans and Democrats, would not be in that chamber Tuesday night all together to hear the president's State of the Union is beyond me. But let me go back to something you just said in terms of scrubbing the background of this individual. When you go through all of that social media and those posts to try to find out who, in fact, this individual was, what specifically are they looking for? Do you expect we will then find a motive and what was going through his mind to actually show up at Mar-a-Lago with a shotgun and a gas can? What specifically will the FBI be doing and looking at?
Right. So again, they will specifically be going through any form of communication that he had electronically, digitally, technologically. They will be going through his text messages, his phone call history, who his friends were. They will be interviewing everybody, his family members, friends, coworkers, classmates, whatever it might be, and his sphere of influence or anyone that knew him. So they'll be doing interviews. They'll be going through all of his, scrubbing all of his social media, all of his devices, his computers, his laptops. And again, one thing that's really important, I would like to know, was he involved in gaming? You know, there seems to be a common pattern that a lot of these individuals actually, live in this world and then they want to act it out and carry out the shooting in real life. I would be very curious. We have no indication that this was what happened in this instance, but there has been a pattern in many of these young male shooters. And again, we're seeing the pattern of the young male shooters being involved in this type of activity. So let's see what the FBI comes up with, but they will do a full and exhaustive case. I have no doubt in my mind it will be fully, it'll be a good investigation. FBI Miami, it's sad to say this is not their first time to do an investigation of this sort. Ryan Ruth, they just had a successful prosecution. He was sentenced to life in prison because of the shooting attempt on the golf course with President Trump. And obviously, we know that Thomas Crooks, he is now deceased. The FBI continues to, work these cases, but they will have a full analysis of who this is. And that's why it's so important. They worked with the profilers from the behavioral analysis unit out of Quantico. They are the best of the best. And they will get a full picture of who did this and understand the patterns because, Maria, there are distinctive patterns that we're seeing in many of these shooters.
Do we know for sure that this shooter was targeting President Trump? I mean, it could be that he knew President Trump was at the White House at the governor's meeting. It certainly was widely broadcast. But you made an important point a moment ago. Maybe Melania was at Mar-a-Lago. Maybe his family was there. What do we know in terms of who was in Mar-a-Lago and how this person was able to get as close as he was?
That's part of the ongoing investigation. It is just beginning. And these are excellent questions that the FBI will be looking very closely at. What was his intent? What was his, what were his internet searches leading up to this, this crime that he committed? Was he, targeting President Trump? Did he know? Did he look up that he was at a governor's meeting? Did he know that he wasn't there? Whether he's there or not there, the investigation is going to be the same. They're going to carry this out. They're going to see. And again, we don't know where the family members are at this time, but we're in the beginning stages. The message I would like to make very clear, if you think that you're going to attempt to get close to a perimeter that you are not supposed to be around or breach, and you attempt to raise a gun at a law enforcement officer, you will face a severe consequence.
All right, Nicole, please stand by. We're going to come back to you as you work the phones, and we will be talking with you shortly, former special agent Nicole Parker. I want to bring in right now our nation's Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, with us this morning. And Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us. We had planned to have you on this program to discuss tariffs, but let me first begin with your reaction. Do you know if President Trump was in Washington at 1:30 a.m. last night?
Good morning, Maria, and good to be with you. I just spoke with President Trump. He spent the night in D.C. He was here for the National Governors Conference, gave a great speech to the governors last night. And, you know, Maria, I just want to say, why don't we look back here and think two would-be assassins dead, one in jail for life, and you know, this venom coming from the other side. Look at this terrible, profane Senate commercial in Illinois. I would call for them to take that down. Take that down, because it is that kind of venom that, you know, we don't know whether this person was a mastermind, unhinged, or what, but they are normalizing this violence. It's got to stop. I want to congratulate Sean Curran and the Secret Service for protecting the president and his family.
And how is it possible that this individual could have gotten as close as he did to Mar-a-Lago last night?
Yeah, for anyone who's driven along there, the perimeter is very very protected. So, you know, we'll see. I don't know whether, you know, did he come along the beach? Did he, you know, I don't know, but you know, I can tell you the Secret Service is running so much better now than it was in Butler. New leadership, and you know, President Trump and his family, they're safe, but they shouldn't have to endure attempt after attempt.
And Secretary, will there be any further changes in terms of the president's security, the security at Mar-a-Lago post this incident?
Yeah, Maria, I'm not going to discuss that on TV, but you know, I think the perimeter around the president is as strong as it's ever been. But again, you know, this existential threat, this venom from the left, really has to stop. They've normalized this violence.
Yeah, Secretary, I want to get your take on the impact of the Supreme Court's decision. While much of the discussion over the Supreme Court's decision to rule against the president's emergency tariffs, or some of the tariffs, it's been focused on the impact on foreign allies and the president's power. But it's worth noting that this ruling will also have a profound impact on America's fiscal position. The Committee for a Responsible Budget, President Maya McGuinness, told me that the Supreme Court ruling will cut government revenue by $1.9 trillion through fiscal 2036. It will increase debt by $2.4 trillion over the same period. Debt could now rise to 125% of GDP, with deficits rising to more than 7% of GDP. It's worth noting this SCOTUS impact on U.S. debt. Do you believe that the president's actions to come up with tariffs under a different authority will, in fact, replace all of the revenue lost from this ruling?
Yeah. So, Maria, let's take a step back here. And Maya McGuinness should be ashamed, and they should take the word responsible out of her organization's name. Everything she told you was completely irresponsible. And look, where were they when the Biden administration blew out the deficit? That we had a fiscal contraction last year. So she should be ashamed. So let me tell you what's going to happen. First, this ruling was a very narrow ruling in terms of the president's ability to use ᗷᖇEᗩKITG to collect revenues. The Supreme Court said the president can put in a full embargo, but he cannot collect $1. So the president still has the most draconian measure for negotiations, and you know that under Sections 232, Sections 301, we're already collecting substantial tariff revenue. The ᗷᖇEᗩKITG tariffs are going to be replaced in 3 days with the Section 122. And I can tell you at Treasury, contrary to what the Committee for an Irresponsible Budget, or whatever it's called, says, tariff revenue will be unchanged this year and will be unchanged in the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, just to be clear, she's saying the fact that the SCOTUS ruled against the president's emergency tariffs will be problematic for the U.S.'s fiscal policy.
Again, that is wrong. Okay. Treasury projections show 2026 revenues are from tariffs unchanged, and all the out years unchanged. What is going to happen, the president announced on Friday and then amended over the weekend, 15% global tariff using a very robust authority from 1974. Those will be layered on with Section 232, Section 301, and the 122s, they run for 150 days. And during that time, Commerce USTR will be doing studies, and the studies will likely lead to increased tariff revenues. We've been in contact with our foreign trading partners, and they like the tariff deals. So, they're not going to be changed. And the president remains undeterred in his determination to lower our trade deficit and bring manufacturing back to the U.S.
Now, Secretary, what about the potential for refunds from the 2025 tariff revenue that you were able to raise? That in and of itself cut into the deficit, and you've talked about that a lot. What can you tell us about how that money will have to be repaid, or is it going to overlap with this new revenue that you will be raising as a result of the 15% tariffs?
Yeah, so Maria, I can't tell you anything because on Friday, the Supreme Court did not address that. They remanded it back to the lower court. And I imagine that we will be hearing from them in weeks or months to come. And then we will follow their instructions.
Okay, so do you expect this to be in the courts? I mean, you've got some corporations saying, I expect a refund at this point.
Well, again, this is a court decision. Supreme Court made one decision. The lower court's going to make another. That it's out of our hands since it's in the court, and we will follow the court's orders.
Now, Secretary, I know that recently the president suggested that there was unlikely a chance for a reconciliation package before the midterm elections. But with this change from SCOTUS on the emergency tariffs, would the president be open to putting tariff legal situation in a reconciliation package? Is that on the table now, once again?
Look, Maria, it could be on the table, but again, we do not need, the administration, the president does not need Congress to move the tariff revenue back up. The president ran and received won the popular vote, won the swing states, won an electoral landslide, and he is fulfilling his mandate to the American people to bring back manufacturing and stop the U.S. from being ripped off by our trading partners. And he used ᗷᖇEᗩKITG for a year and pushed down tariff barriers, non-tariff trade barriers, unfair subsidies, and the trading partners are going to stick with these great deals.
Yeah. So what kind of tariffs, what's the amount of tariffs in question for 2025? And how much tariff revenue are you expecting to raise in 2026, Secretary?
Yeah. So the overall amount, if we look, that it's several $100 million. That's as I said, it's going to be unchanged.
So 175 billion in tariffs for 2025, and in 26 unchanged.
Unchanged.
Yes. Secretary, thanks very much for handling all of that. We appreciate your time this morning, sir. Thank you.
Good to see you, Maria.
And to you, Secretary Scott Bessent. We'll be back with Utah Senator Mike Lee as we continue covering this breaking news. Stay with us.
Yeah, Trump wins. Another one.
Welcome back. We're in breaking news mode this morning with coverage following the breaking news out of Florida last night. The U.S. Secret Service shot and killed an armed man they said unlawfully entered the secure perimeter at Mar-a-Lago overnight. President Trump was not at Mar-a-Lago. He was in Washington. Joining me now is Utah Senator Mike Lee. And Senator, thanks for being here this morning. Your reaction to what has taken place overnight.
This is tragic. It's fortunate that President Trump was not in danger and that the president, of course, is well secured. Nonetheless, it's alarming when you look at the rhetoric that's coming out and the attacks that follow, that frequently accompany these things and are oftentimes intensified by them. You have to ask yourself the question, is it all worth it? Is it worth the far left's aggressive rhetoric that they're using over and over again, which frankly isn't warranted anywhere? But nonetheless, we're grateful that the president is safe and hope that these things stop.
I mean, when you speak with your colleagues on the left in the Senate and you raise these issues that the rhetoric is dangerous, that we may potentially be talking about a third assassination attempt on our president, what is their response?
Look, most of the time, whoever you're talking to on this doesn't tend to think that it's their issue. Nonetheless, I think as a country, it would be worth us taking stock from time to time and asking, is this what we're supposed to be doing? If the U.S. government has become the biggest presence in people's lives, if government policy dictates whether someone lives in peace or in hostility culminating in violence, perhaps we're approaching government in entirely the wrong way. It's not just that they don't like his policies, it's that they're comparing him frequently with all the certainty that they're capable of people who engaged in violent acts involving and culminating in mass murder. That's the sort of thing that causes many people, including the mentally deranged, to go out and do things that they shouldn't do and wouldn't otherwise attempt.
Senator, let me switch gears. You are one of the architects of the Save America Act. This is an act that will require voters to show ID before they vote. Are you expecting to take and do a talking filibuster this upcoming week to debate the Save Act on the floor?
Look, we absolutely need the Save America Act. 85 to 90% of Americans agree that people ought to have to establish that they're citizens to vote in U.S. elections, and they should have to show up on polling day with a photo ID. I also believe that with a bill this popular, we really owe it to the American people when we consider it to make any senators wishing to filibuster to actually speak. They shouldn't be able to filibuster while they're napping. They shouldn't be able to filibuster while they're at the Munich Security Conference. Filibuster in this circumstance should require them to go to the Senate floor, seek recognition, and start speaking until they are no longer able. That's how we ought to get this thing passed, and I think we need to. As far as the timing of it, that's going to be complicated a little bit by the fact that Democrats shut down the Department of Homeland Security and then left for the Munich Security Conference. We'll have to deal with that, I suspect, before we turn to the Save America Act, but that's why we've got to get it done fast.
So are you saying that you will be unable to do a talking filibuster this week because the Department of Homeland Security is still shut down?
Yeah, it's difficult to imagine a scenario in which the Senate proceeds to a measure intending and hoping, as I hope it will, to enforce the talking filibuster, meaning to require any senator wishing to filibuster to speak. That could take some time. And I think there are reasons why we'll have to get the Department of Homeland Security funded before we can begin that effort. That said, I'll continue to make the case to my colleagues and to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, whose support I'm very grateful to have as a co-sponsor of the Save America Act, to move this forward.
Well, there are certain Democrats who also support showing ID to vote. I want to ask you about that. What is the appropriate ID to prove citizenship?
All right. So for proving citizenship under the Save America Act, you can do it, obviously, with any of the traditional forms that you use whenever you're starting a new job with a new employer. Obviously, a birth certificate or security card can help with this. If you've got a U.S. passport, that will suffice. But the Save America Act actually gives you more options. It provides more flexibility, even than the I-9 form that you have to fill out every time you start a new job. It allows you to go through a process of attestation, signing a sworn affidavit indicating the circumstances under which your citizenship was obtained. And then the state in which you apply to register to vote can follow up on those things. But the point there is that even if you are someone who has lost your documentation, there are still ways of making sure that you can register to vote. This is not too hard to comply with. But people should have to provide some sort of support for the fact that they are U.S. citizens before they're allowed to register to vote in a federal election.
Of course. And we have been really taken aback by the fact that the mayor of New York City, Mamdani, is now demanding that anyone who wants to partake in shoveling snow needs to show several pieces of citizenship proof. So this is why I mentioned what's the proper proof of citizenship. You know, your colleagues on the left say they don't like the fact that it's anything more than a driver's license. What is wrong with the driver's license, and what has happened in terms of that process of giving out driver's license being abused? What can you say there?
Okay, well, first of all, there are two different sets of documents that are required. Under the Save America Act, you've got to prove your citizenship at the time you register, and then show up with a government-issued photo ID at the polling place to prove that you are the same person listed on your voter registration. In nearly all 50 states, you can get a driver's license even if you are not a U.S. citizen. In 19 states plus D.C., you can get a driver's license even if you're a known illegal immigrant.
Right.
And that's exactly why we've got to do this, because under the 1993 NVRA, if you fill out one of these forms, check the box and sign your name, that's all you have to do when applying for a driver's license to simultaneously register to vote. That's why that's not enough, because in nearly every state, you can go through that process. And as long as you're willing to lie on that form and sign your name to it, then you can register to vote. There ought to be more required than that. So if they said that Save America Act is Jim Crow, this Jim Snow example in New York is really perplexing. It's okay to require people to provide proof of their citizenship in the context of snow removal, but not voting. I don't understand.
And that's the point that I was looking for. Senator, before you go, do you believe you have support from Senate Majority Leader John Thune to take Save America to the floor and get a vote?
I believe Senator Thune is going to bring it forward. I believe he's going to allow us to get a vote. Okay. What remains to be seen is exactly what procedure we will use. But I hope in that process, I'll continue to make the case to him and to my other colleagues that filibustering senators should be required to speak. If they don't want this law, let them explain that at length to the American people until they are no longer able to do so.
So should we not expect a talking filibuster until the Department of Homeland Security reopens?
That's my expectation. It's hard to imagine a scenario in which we would begin a process, particularly one that might involve, and I hope will involve, a talking filibuster. We've got to get DHS funded first.
Okay. Senator, we'll be watching that. And of course, I know this will be part of the President's State of the Union in his address on Tuesday night. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be back with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin next. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now the single largest deregulation.
By the way, so New York City, you need 5 IDs just to remove snow, just to shovel snow off the ground, but not to vote. That's crazy.
Regulation action in history. President Trump, along with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, rolling back President Obama's 2009 greenhouse gas endangerment finding and all the subsequent federal emission standards for vehicles and engines from model years 2012 to 2027 and beyond. The EPA says revoking the rule will save taxpayers more than $1.3 trillion, along with lowering the cost of new vehicles by an average of more than $2,400. Joining me right now in the Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. And Lee, thank you very much for joining us this morning. As you know, we are in breaking news coverage mode this morning, given the incident last night at Mar-a-Lago. Before we get into this large deregulation action, what is your reaction to a shooter showing up at Mar-a-Lago holding a shotgun and a gas can?
I mean, it's infuriating. When does it end? And I mean, I feel like after what we witnessed with Steve Scalise in 2017, and gosh, it's been almost a decade, that would be enough for people to be taking action to stop this form of radicalization that we're seeing out there. And the people who lose their lives, like my good friend Charlie Kirk, the people with the close calls like President Trump has now on multiple occasions, the people who have experienced the physical violence. I mean, we settle our scores at the ballot box, and for people to try to bring a shotgun and a fuel can to the president's home at Mar-a-Lago to cause who knows what kind of damage, I look forward to learning more. It is infuriating.
Yeah, and we know that there's an active investigation underway to try to understand the motive here and who this person is. Do you expect this rhetoric to stop anytime soon? What have you heard from colleagues when you raise this issue? We still hear words like fascist, Nazi from the media, as well as from sitting leaders like the governor of Minnesota or colleagues on the left.
Honestly, the scary part of it is that, to be brutally honest, I fear that the rhetoric is only going to continue to get worse on the left. I mean, they're desperate, and in the search for power to ramp up an activist base, they're running out of words. You know, when you start with right-wing extremist, I remember, back in the day in 2010 with the Tea Party, and then you're getting closer to just using words like you talk about Nazi or terrorist, and the way history has taught us of people like Hitler and the Nazis. What are you supposed to do to combat that fascism? The rhetoric is a triggering radicalization of a base that is getting their followers to take extreme measures and harm people. And I think for leaders of the Democratic Party, they're afraid to take it on head on. Instead, they just continue to fuel it. And I fear it's going to get worse.
An incredibly dangerous situation that we are all watching unfold. Lee, let me turn to your portfolio and what you have been able to do in terms of rolling back regulations. This is one of President Trump's key tenets of his agenda, deregulation. And we're talking about the climate change agenda of President Obama. You are rolling that back. Tell us about that and its impact.
President Trump on day one signed an executive order telling me to do all the research, the vetting, provide a recommendation in the first 30 days of his administration on what to do with the 2009 endangerment finding. We provided that recommendation and pressed forward at Trump speed, announcing with President Trump in the Roosevelt Room what is the largest act of deregulation in American history, $1.3 trillion of savings. That means $2,400 per new vehicle, less electric vehicle infrastructure that's needed. It adds up in a very big way for the American economy. What we saw from the Obama and Biden administrations taking the endangerment finding for mobile sources, then stationary sources, oil and gas, airplanes. I mean, they ended up doing what amounted to trillions of dollars of regulation. We're just talking here about the light, medium, and heavy duty vehicle greenhouse gas emissions that we repealed. It's a big savings, and it's about following the best reading of the law. And the Clean Air Act simply doesn't state that EPA should be doing trillions of dollars of regulation to combat global climate change. That's not even in Section 202 of the Clean Air Act. So we're respecting Supreme Court precedent. We're following the law, and we're delivering on that Trump mandate that the American public probably voted for.
What can you do to push or encourage the Congress to codify this into law? Because, even in the most recent earnings season, you saw the automakers, for example, having to take charges, switch gears because the law is now changing with these executive orders. And in terms of having long-term confidence in what the law is, we need to see some of this codified. Do you expect that to happen anytime soon?
Well, here's the greatest thing about this particular action. In the best reading of Section 202 of the Clean Air Act and following the Supreme Court case in Loper Bright, it doesn't allow us to combat global climate change. All the many mental leaps that the Obama administration made in 2009 to reach this endangerment finding isn't even allowed in the current version of the law. And by the way, kudos to Congress, because they passed 3 really important Congressional Review Act bills that got rid of Biden EPA waivers to California to get rid of tailpipe emissions, got rid of their electric vehicle mandate that a bunch of other states had subscribed to. So you look at President Trump's auto policy in total. When you look at getting rid of the electric vehicle mandates, you look at the repeal of this endangerment finding, reset the CAFE standards, the U.S. auto industry is booming.
Yeah. And we should point out a word on affordability, because I know this is going to be among the headlines of President Trump's address for the State of the Union address on Tuesday night. You say that this rollback of this climate change agenda and these emission standards will mean that the price of a vehicle will also come down, along with all of the other efforts that President Trump has been leading in terms of getting healthcare costs down and grocery prices down.
Yeah, that's right. So we're promoting more consumer choice because this also includes getting rid of the off-cycle credit on that annoying start-stop feature. No more climate participation trophies to manufacturers for putting a feature that makes your car die at red lights and stop signs. So more consumer choice, more affordable new vehicles, and a lower cost of living because the trucks that deliver the goods you purchase are now going down as well.
All right, we will be watching the impact far and wide. Lee, thank you very much. EPA Administrator
Thanks,
Lee
Maria.
Zeldin. We'll be back with Florida Congressman Brian Mast. We are taking a look at Iran in the middle of all of this. Stay with us.
When you're young,
You know, I used to hate that button that turns the car off or you wait for the red light. Every time you stop, it was really, really annoying. Cannot even lie. But Trump is fixing everything.
A limited military strike on Iran as talks between Washington and Tehran continue over Iran's nuclear program, with the president setting a deadline for a deal to be made within the next week or so. And as the U.S. amasses its largest military buildup in the Middle East since the Iraq War in 2003, centered around air power and maritime deterrence, with the Ford and Lincoln carrier strike groups in place. Joining me now in the Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Brian Mast. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for being here this morning. And of course, thank you for your service to our great nation. What are you expecting in terms of the U.S. potentially striking Iran?
So I expect, number one, that diplomacy continues. You have Kushner, you have Witkoff meeting in Geneva, trying to offer, here's the off-ramp. You have to end nuclear enrichment. You have to end ballistic missile program. Stop having the Ayatollah kill your people. Stop threatening the United States of America. I don't think they'll take that off-ramp. I think we end up using the capabilities of our two carrier battle groups that are in the region when that timeline hits to say the threat to America comes to an end. It's destruction or diplomacy. It's one or the other. And I think they choose destruction.
So just to be clear, the president has given a deadline of the first week in March. You are expecting a strike from the United States on Iran.
I expect that Iran does not take the diplomatic off-ramp and that it comes to a strike for the president to protect the homeland of the United States of America, which absolutely this is against an imminent threat against the American people. I can give one example of Americans literally killed. The beginning of 2024, 3 American service members killed by the hand of Iran while they were in Jordan. That's one example. Continual attempts to fly drones to our merchant marine fleet, drones to our Navy vessels, you name it. They are constantly threatening America. And the president says, no more. This comes to an end. He is always about protecting the homeland and about protecting our people. And this is no different.
And of course, we saw him stick to his promises when he tried to give them a timeline to end their nuclear ambitions and ultimately had to direct our military to strike and destroy much of that facilities.
President told Iran, end your nuclear weapons program. They chose not to do it. He gave them a certain number of days. Israel closed the skies over Iran, and then America brought in the B-2 bombers, a capability only we had, and destroyed that infrastructure, obliterated it.
And Secretary of State Marco Rubio is going to be meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel in the coming week. Can you assess specifically what the threat is? What is Iran trying to do?
Iran is doing what they're always trying to do. Any place that they can use one of their proxies, the Houthis, Hezbollah, arm them, train them, and then direct them to kill Americans, they will do it. If they can attack our merchant marine fleet or our Navy vessels, they will do it. They constantly chant, as we've all become so numb to, they'll say death to America. They want to kill Americans, but they want the capabilities to kill Americans at an even higher rate with ballistic missiles, with nuclear weapons, and that's not going to be allowed. And that's what that whole thing is about. On top of which, again, they're killing and imprisoning tens of thousands of their people. It's time, I think, one way or another for this regime in Iran to come to a close. And I think it's inevitable that there is regime change there. But what we know about this administration, any action that they take it because they meet the trigger of making sure that tomorrow is a better day, just like in Venezuela.
And of course, the president did say a week and a half ago, it is time for a regime change in Iran. Mr. Chairman, before you go, let me get your reaction to what has taken place overnight. We had a shooter show up at Mar-a-Lago, armed with a shotgun and a gas can. This, of course, in your backyard in Florida.
We have the best possible sheriff's departments anywhere across the country. So thank you to my Palm Beach County sheriff's deputies, always putting themselves in the line of fire. We have lost sheriff's deputies in the past, very unfortunately, protecting our president. They do their job better than anybody can do it. And shame on Democrats. If you don't know, Secret Service is not funded because Democrats are not funding Department of Homeland Security. So those Secret Service agents that are on the ground there working, their department, their agency is not funded right now, putting them at risk of not being paid to do their always inherently dangerous work.
The president was in Washington at the time, meeting with the nation's governors. Do you believe this was, in fact, a third assassination attempt on our president?
Absolutely. If somebody is coming to the president's home with a firearm, with a gas can, with something incendiary or something explosive or anything else, you have to believe they have an intent to conduct an attack against the president of the United States of America, or his family, or his friends, or the ambassadors that might be there, or the cabinet secretaries that might be there. It could be a host of different targets because this is a huge place for diplomacy taking place, but they are coming with intent to disrupt the actions of the United States all the way up to the president.
Unbelievable. Dangerous moments. Congressman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, we appreciate your time. Congressman Brian Mast this morning. We'll be right back.
So another Trump assassination attempt. So what do we got here? We have Iran is about to start a forever war again, or another war. Mexico is collapsing. One of their top generals just got killed. Not a general, but like a mafia gangbanger just got killed. So they're retaliating just to train Costco and bringing everything down. It's crazy. Trump got a lot on his plate. But what do you think is going to happen? What's going to happen next? Comment down below. And before you go anywhere, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Give us a like and let's try to share the word. Because what's happening today is historic. They're trying to kill Trump. They're not going to succeed. It's not going to happen. Iran is about to go to war. Mexico shutting down. And Cuba is next. Trump is doing a lot. He's trying to fix Cuba or get that government to collapse so they could start something that works, not socialist. Oh, yeah, in New York City, they're trying to pay people to shovel snow. And for that, you're going to need at least 5 pieces of ID. That's crazy. By the way, I got a new system here to record, so I'm just testing things out, see how this works, and where's the best place to put this. But for now, this is what I'm doing. Let me move on, try to fix it a little bit, get things going. See you in the next video. Peace. I gotta move the camera. I don't know where I'm going to set up. Oh, well. Let's go.